We are very lucky today on the Daily Report to be joined by, I believe, the first candidate that we're going to be speaking to in this cycle, running in New Jersey's 10th district, Imani Oakley. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
We're very glad to have you on. Very glad to get a chance to learn a little bit about you, about the district, and about the candidate you're going to be running against. Why don't we start off with you? I'm always curious, what leads people to decide to run for office. Tell me a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm sure there's plenty of people watching this who have met me already, but for those who've known me for a while, they know that I am a big advocate for the idea that if we actually want to change things, not only in New Jersey, but also throughout the entire nation, it really requires us to steadfastly fight against unjust systems in all of their forms, whether that's racism, sexism, capitalism, or what we have here in New Jersey, which is some very serious Tammany Hall machine style politics. And, I first got into politics because I like the permanency that comes with passing a law. A lot of folks are very turned off by elections these days, and I definitely get it. But what I find that's unique about the policy and government aspect is when you pass a law, it is there for a very long time. And it is hard to get rid of. It is very hard to change. And so on the bad side of that, of course, we have bad laws that stick around and oppress people forever. But if we can get it right on the front end, we can also have laws that really help people and transform things for a very, very long time. And so I started getting involved in government because of that idea. And I first started out working in New Jersey's machine. And I learned very quickly that most people are not in this to actually facilitate transformative change. And so then I left and I went on to join some very leftist spaces. I was the legislative director for the New Jersey chapter of Working Families Party. And there I really got to lean into fighting against these Tammany Hall machine party bosses that really only see our communities, especially Black and brown communities, as nothing more than financial and political playgrounds. And over time, I just became so disgusted by it. I decided that I actually want to take up the mantle. I actually want to take up the fight and take down one of their really solidified players, because my opponent inherited the seat from his father. And you can't really get more kind of solidified in politics than when you're part of a political dynasty. And so, I decided to take on that fight. I'm taking it on for my communities. I'm taking it on for the people who have lost their homes to foreclosure here in New Jersey, for people who are currently at threat of eviction here in New Jersey, people who have been at threat of getting lead poisoning due to all the lead in our water and in the paint of old homes and apartment buildings. I'm taking it on for the immigrant population here who lives at the threat of ICE agents and ICE facilities. And I'm taking on that fight, and I look forward to winning it in June 2022.
Okay, well, you raised a lot of interesting points there. You referenced there that you are running against an incumbent, Donald Payne Jr, who's been in the seat for a number of years, whose father was in the seat for far more years. Together, there might be a lot of people working on your campaign that have never lived in the district without a Payne being in charge of it. So. What do the people of the 10th district think about that? What do they think about the legacy of the father and now the son, and what they've contributed and not contributed to the district?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really interesting. When I was right before I announced and I was strategizing with my team, I talked with them because I was like, all right, Donald Payne Sr., the father, was actually a very good congressman, and that's undeniable. He did a lot for the Black community in this district, and historically, this district is actually the only Black majority district in New Jersey. So it was a very big deal, and his father really did a lot of work. And I probably wouldn't even be doing this if his father was still in this seat. But what I'm finding is voters who remember both his father and have seen, the son do very little that he's done, they are very upset with my opponent because they feel as though he has not lived up to his father's legacy. And they would absolutely be correct. I mean, the guy has been in Congress for about 10 years now and has really only introduced 3 bills. And one of them was to rename a post office. And again, we are talking about a region where people, the number 1 region in the country, number 1, where mostly Black and brown homeowners are losing their homes to foreclosure. We have a looming eviction crisis and thus a gentrification and homelessness crisis. And we have a guy who has done nothing, introduced 0 bills with regards to affordable housing. We also have a very large and thriving immigrant community here in this district as well. And we have a guy who has continually voted to bring federal funding to the ICE facilities here in New Jersey, as well as he actually missed the opportunity to sign on to the Congressional Black Caucus's letter stating that they were in favor of improving and creating a better pathway to citizenship. And so people are very disturbed and disappointed by his real lack of a legacy. And they feel as though it's time for him to be challenged. And I'm happy to be providing them with that breath of fresh air, to be honest.
Okay. Did the post office get renamed in the end?
It did.
Oh, okay. So, well, I mean, we have to acknowledge that then. So look, man, that isn't. I'm continually amazed. 10 years, 3. He's not a member of Democratic leadership. We have to acknowledge that. However, in terms of raw power as a politician, he is equally as powerful as any member of the squad, as Nancy Pelosi, as so many people. I don't understand what a lot of people choose to do with their time. But that said, your district has recently had to experience Hurricane Ida. That was a crisis for multiple different parts of the country. How would you rate the response to that particular crisis?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. The flooding in this area was disastrous. I mean, I have literal friends that I've grown up with who cannot go to their homes right now because they're living in hotels, who have had their cars totaled, and now they are trying to figure out, how am I going to get to work every day? We don't have good public transit, so it's really not very convenient or very cheap for them to take public transit to work, and they completely lost their cars. They're currently waiting to get any type of money from their insurance, and that could take months. So really, it really impacted this area really poorly. And the reason is this: we have very poor infrastructure, and infrastructure that is absolutely not ready for the impact and the negative impact, I would say, of climate change. We have very, very old sewer systems, which are causing, again, when all of this water is coming down, water is not being filtered through these sewage systems properly. And so you have a lot of flooding. We also have areas that are just built very weird. There's one of my friends lives near like a train station, and he lives on like the down part of the hill. And so the way they built the train station was not very good or conducive to avoiding flooding. And so the rain just like floods into the yard whenever it rains heavily. And it's a real issue. We need to get green infrastructure. We need to start getting serious about climate change. And let me tell you, my opponent is absolutely not doing that right now. He has taken money from ExxonMobil. He has taken money from oil pipeline packs, including Enridge, which is the oil pipeline pack responsible for the Line 3 pipeline. And he has not signed on to a Green New Deal. And the most he has ever done for the environment here on his own is, after I announced and I criticized him on his environmental record, he finally put in an amendment to bring New Jersey about $1 million or so in funding to fix lead piping for a multi-billion-dollar issue that he had 10 years to bring money in for. And so it's really disheartening because people are really suffering, and it shows you the bigger picture here, why we need to get progressives into Congress, because real people are suffering because of the inaction or sometimes the action, such as taking money from oil pipeline packs and then not legislating. The real people are suffering from electeds that do things like that. And that's why I'm going to take on Donald Payne. I'm going to beat him.
Okay. One thing I always like to do is sort of try to place the candidate in sort of a hypothetical, like the political situation we're in right now. Donald Payne, I don't know exactly what he's doing with his day or what he's doing with his week, but in theory right now, the Democratic Party is in the middle of these negotiations about what the reconciliation infrastructure bill is going to contain, what it's not going to contain. We have the Senate parliamentarians saying that it's not going to have anything to do with a pathway to citizenship. You have Senator Kirsten Sinema saying that we can't have all this stuff about prescription drugs. And there's this big debate over how big the bill should actually be, with many progressives saying $3.5 trillion is already a compromise. That is the floor. Some right-wing Democrats saying that it needs to be cut significantly. It sounds like a lot of the things that you're interested in terms of legislation, at least theoretically, will be included in this bill if it's large enough. So if you weren't candidate Imani Oakley, if you were holding the Payne seat right now, what would you be using your time for when it comes to this big debate that the Democratic Party's in the middle of?
Yeah, for sure. So a few things. It depends on, I guess, where my position in hopeful leadership would be, but I would spend a lot of time making sure that we are holding hearings on these things that include and bring in members of the public who can talk about why exactly we need this to be big. I would be having meetings with my colleagues. Typically those meetings are private, so you meet with them in their offices and start to tell them, like, listen, your district has XYZ thing going on. Your district has been seriously impacted by COVID. Your district, half of your district is at threat of eviction right now. Right now, your district has just flooded, right? I would be having really very serious talks with my colleagues and being like, if you want your district to survive, if you really care about the people of your district, you need to be going bigger on this thing. We need to make sure that we are pushing through as much relief as possible. And for those who then, decide to go publicly and say, well, how are we going to for it? How are we going to this? I would then likely have a meeting and a town hall in their district to talk to their constituents so that they can have their voices heard and demonstrate to them very publicly and very in your face style about why we actually need to make things bigger and why the public desperately needs for us to stop worrying about money, which we don't worry about when we bail out corporations or any of that other stuff, or when we're, doing an exorbitant amount of military spending. We don't worry about it then. So we need to not worry about it now. We need to be putting money into saving people. And so for those who would want to go public with, frankly, lies about how we can't afford it, well, for them, I would turn the volume up a little bit, I'll say.
Okay. If there's somebody watching that wants to find out more about your campaign, where can they get that information?
So you can go to oakleyforcongress.com. That is my last name, OAKLEY, the word for, FOR, Congress.com. And please go there, check out more about me and my background, my plans for once I'm elected. And please, if you can, drop a donation, $25, $50. If you're really feeling good, $100, because I'm not taking money from corporate PACs or lobbyists or developers. So any amount really does help our movement. And I thank each and every one of you for taking out the time to listen today. And please check out my website.
Okay, Imani Oakley, enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.